You have Dr. Wendy Walsh with you. This is the Dr. Wendy Walsh Show. Another welcome back to my viewers who are on YouTube. You can always download the iHeartRadio app and hear the whole show. After this segment, I will be taking your calls, so I'm going to start right now by telling you the phone number. Write it down, 1-800-520-1KFI. That's 1-800-520-1534. All right, what does the research say about what we can do to prevent? I want to say that long-term monogamy is filled with phases and stages. You're going to have times where you're in a valley and you're thinking, it's over. We have to throw in the towel. And by the way, it's usually not a good idea to use the D word as a threat. Like maybe we should divorce whenever you're having a fight, because it only raises anxiety, right? So I want to tell you that you might just be in a phase, that you might not be actually ready for divorce, although January is the month where most divorce filings take place. I will say this, the first thing you should do is just try to relax, and I'll tell you why. Because anxiety about divorce makes things worse. I met a woman recently who was on her fourth marriage, and a friend of mine said, why do people bother getting married again? And I said, because divorce doesn't teach you how to be a better mate. Divorce doesn't teach you how to find a better mate. Divorce teaches you that you can survive divorce. And so when you go and say, I do, you're like, if it doesn't work out, it's fine. I know I can get through this, right? So, but I do want to say that if you're worried about divorce and you fear divorce, it's like life in some way is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like what we fear, we make happen in some crazy way. So if I were a psychotherapist, which I'm not, I'm a psychology professor, but the research says people need to just calm down, reduce their anxiety. And here's the other really important thing. Talk about what's wrong, not who's wrong. If you're having relationship problems and you're blaming your partner, then the only thing your brain can do is, well, the way to solve this is to leave the partner. But instead, if you say, we have a problem, we as a team, the global we have a problem. This is our problem. And then you ask the most important word in the world, how? How can we solve this? How can we fix this? That alone can change the dynamic in your relationship. But I do want to say that maybe you need to change. I want you to ask yourself, what is your piece in this so-called problem that you've now identified, right? What is it that you need to do? Because you got to change what needs to be changed. It's interesting how often people will say to me, well, we're going through a rough patch in my relationship, but we're just going to wait it out and see what happens. Things don't just get better. Problems don't get solved if they get pushed under the rug and ignored. Time doesn't necessarily heal when it comes to chronic conflict that hasn't been fixed. So I want you to look back at history in your relationship and ask yourself, when did you stop trying? And what can you do to make it better? Now, maybe your partner didn't hear all these things and your partner's being critical and blaming you instead of thinking about the problem. But take some time to listen to your partner. And when I say listen, pay attention to vocal tone, pay attention to body language. Here's the thing, not everybody was raised like me, where we wear our colors on the sleeve. There are no secrets. I mean, literally, I process externally. Sometimes I hear a thought for the very first time out my lips, which can be very embarrassing. But other people have been taught to only don't talk unless you have something nice to say, or keep it inside, or they should get it. I've implied it. What do you mean implied it? Tell us, right? But if it's your partner and that's the way they are, then you might have to pay attention to their vocal tone, their metaphors, their body language, whatever, to really try to understand. I do want to say this, and whether, I'm a parent, and wouldn't we all like to make our kids have perfect behavior in a day, and the same with our partner? Wouldn't we like them to have perfect behavior? But one thing where you lose for sure is trying to solve more than one problem at once, trying to change one behavior. Just focus on one thing, okay? Because otherwise you flood. So ask yourself, make your little laundry list together. What are the issues in your relationship? What are you going to work on? So if the issues are, let's say, that you haven't worked as a team on the finances and you're feeling left out because they're being secretive about the finances. Or maybe the problem is that your sex life has declined. Or maybe the problem is that someone is spending too much time out of the relationship with other friends socially that may not be supportive of the relationship. Or maybe the problem is that the division of domestic responsibility doesn't feel even to you in the household. Whatever it is, don't flood. Don't try to do them all at once. Choose one thing and work on it. Because here's what happens. You're actually going to feel good as a team when you achieve and accomplish and fix that one thing. Now, there's been so much research on this. You know, your relationship is only as happy as you imagine it is. I mean, when someone looks from the outside, they can't tell how happy either of you are or both of you are in a relationship. But if you imagine that your relationship is great and that your partner is fabulous, then guess what? It will be. It will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I want you to focus on the positives in your partner instead of always catching them being bad, catch them being good. And having said this, I also want you to work on forgiveness. You know what forgiveness is? It is letting resentment go from your body. It's a gift to yourself. It's not letting them off the hook. It's letting your anxiety about their shortcomings go. So you've got to work on forgiveness. And finally, I want you to start connecting again. Why did you get married in the first place? Ask yourself that. I want you to go back and remember. Remember what it was like on your first date, your first weekend away, what it was like as you built up towards the wedding. Your brain needs to go back and really remember what it was like. Our brains are amazing things. If we can just have good, positive thoughts, that can sometimes change a lot. And also, you might not agree with me here, and there might be many of people who do not hold the same opinion. This is my opinion. Have sex, even if you don't want to. And here's why. It creates all these neurohormones, and your body starts to bond again. Now, I want to pause and say one thing. If your relationship is completely toxic and a toxic nest for kids, we're talking about addiction, we're talking about domestic violence, severe emotional abuse, chronic cheating. Don't do any of these things, right? Go to a therapist, talk about how you can separate. But if your relationship is just in a slump, there's some things you could do. Now, I remember when I was in one of my human sexuality classes as a student, I remember the instructor saying, well, no one should ever have sex if they don't want to. And I'm thinking, this woman hasn't been in a long-term marriage. To assume that both partners wanted the same amount on the same day, it's crazy to think that. Somebody is always saying, oh, all right, right? I mean, that's just how it works. So if you're in a slump, get out of the slump, connect again. All right, when we come back, I am going to be taking your calls live and going to social media. The phone number is 1-800-520-1KFI. That's 1-800-520-1534. Write it down, 1-800-520-1534. You're listening to the Dr. Wendy Walsh Show on KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. When we come back, right now, let's go to the 24-hour KFI newsroom and Layla Muhammad. Okay, where are we? YouTube? TikTok? YouTube. When we come back, I'm going to be taking your questions. If you'd like to call in, you can. The number is 1-800-520-1534. If you're watching this on a tape, though, it's Sundays at 5 p.m. Pacific time that I generally take the calls. Bye, everybody. We'll see you in a few minutes.